quarterbacks don't win games by themselves. And I don't think his supporting cast is equipped to elevate to a Super Bowl level.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Thursday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, John McMullen. Here one day closer to the Eagles' Week 2 matchup, a Super Bowl rematch versus Kansas City Chiefs. Takes place this Sunday at 4:25. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Thursday morning?
Doing well. Trying to get through the grind of another week of the NFL. And it's just started, Xander. It's just started. But
yeah, no doubt. John, yesterday was a big day. You mentioned Wednesday's the biggest practice of the week. You obviously got to talk to Nick before practice and then got to see a little bit of practice yesterday. We will get into that. I did want to start the show this morning by just saying rest in peace to Charlie Kirk. That was obviously a crazy thing that happened yesterday, John. I'm still kind of sitting with my thoughts on it. I don't exactly know how to articulate all of them at this moment, but just if you had any thoughts, you can share them. If not, we will continue to move on.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think people got to get over the fact that other people have different opinions than they do. And I don't know how you move forward as a society when you can't accept that. It's okay to have disagreements. It's okay to be debating and do things like that. But you have a whole group of people who just can wrap their heads around the thought that other people might want to live in a different way. And for me, I'll be upfront, and I know you're the exact opposite. I'm not the most religious person in the world. I freely admit that. I got no problem with people who are. There's a lot of positives to that. I have no issues with it. Now that's a much more benign subject. But the idea, I think a lot of people can't wrap their heads around the idea that others think differently. And because of that, they think they're fake or they think they're doing it out of malice or those types of situations.
Right.
And it's a mental illness, to be perfectly honest.
Absolutely.
And if there's one thing, stop using the damn word Nazi and fascist. You have no idea what it means. The fact that you can say that in this country proves that you don't have Nazis and fascists in power, because they would shut that shit down immediately. You don't even know what the word means. You're fueling hate. It's absurd. And it works both ways. Obviously, this is just so high profile. It's working one. It works both ways. But I mean, people have to understand. I always boil it down to, I wish Josh Shapiro was on today. I always boil it down to the Wawa test. Nobody's asking anybody their political affiliation at Wawa. Does the person in front of you hold the door? Are they polite to you? That's my test. That's a good person. I don't give a shit what their political views are. I'm not going to give them a litmus test. You got people in this country that don't talk to family, because they have different political views. Get out, do something else, live a healthier life. That's all I have to say.
It's good.
Don't affect other people. Certainly don't have violence on other people. I apologize.
Yeah. Rest in peace to Charlie Kirk, and I pray for his wife and his two young kids that were left behind. Somebody that simply talks to people that don't agree with him each and every day. It's pretty crazy that happened yesterday. Unfortunate, but we will roll on here on Birds 365. Appreciate everybody for being here this morning. Don't forget to hit that like button. Thanks all of you guys, as always, for helping the show grow. Johnny Mac, yesterday, Wednesday practice, you had a chance to see some of it. What are the key takeaways? I know you guys got to talk to Zadarius. You got a chance to talk to Tank Bigsby, a couple of those new guys coming in. John, what'd you see yesterday down there at Eagles practice on Wednesday?
Yeah, well, I think injuries are the main one. Dallas Goedert cropped up, so we'll keep an eye on that. Knee injury, was not able to practice. Told it's not terribly serious, but it could affect him for a game. So got to keep an eye on that for Kansas City. Will Shipley, it's looking pretty clear that he's not going to be able to go, at least in the short term. But again, he's out there, not a long term injury. Landon Dickerson, from a positive perspective, was back out there. So, but he was limited. So, that might be a situation, an ongoing situation where I think he didn't play 11 snaps against the Cowboys. And, you might have to have somebody coming in at certain points of the game, which you don't necessarily want, but could be worse. And Tanner McKee probably not going to be ready yet. So, the indication there, the bet there is that he'll be ready before week 4. If it's anything after week 4, the Eagles probably misread the situation because he would have put him on IR and he would have missed 4 games. So when you don't put somebody on IR, that's an indication that you think he's going to be back in that window. So, but it looks like it'll be Sam Howell as the backup again. So those are the early thoughts from the injury perspective. Zadarius Smith, I think you're going to see Zadarius Smith and Tank Bigsby right away, partially because of what their roles are supposed to be. Zadarius is a pass rusher, a little bit easier. He's not going to drop. I don't think Vic would drop him that much anyway. So the more well-rounded aspect of that thing is not as much in play. And then with Tank, I think it's going to be mainly kickoff returns. I don't know if he could help that quickly on offense, but mainly kickoff returns where it's just, inside, outside zone and go. So I think you're going to see them both, and we'll see how it shakes out. But I tell you, from a physical perspective, Zadarius Smith looks different than every other edge rusher.
Yes, he does, John. There's no doubt about that.
So from a physical perspective, and again, this is a proven player. This is for a very long time. So it's not like you're just, conflating it out of thin air. So I think he's going to be very, very helpful for this team.
Yeah, me too, John Mac. He had some good thoughts yesterday. Seems like a good dude. Seems like a cool dude. So that was pretty good. John, anything on the practice field that stuck out yesterday? I know you just mentioned some of the stuff you saw or you talked to the guys about. Anything stick out in the practice field? I know you don't get to see too much, but I think we're all looking for updates, maybe on Landon Dickerson and things of that nature. Any updates from that stuff, John?
Yeah, I mentioned Landon there. He's back. So, it's more, he was limited, but he's practicing. So that's a good sign. That'll be ready for Kansas City. And that shouldn't surprise anybody. We talk about Landon all the time. He's a guy who's going to, if you let him play, he's going to play. So I don't think there's any doubt that he's going to try to be out there. The question is, similar to last week, will he be able to finish the game? And that's, wait and see more than anything else. But yeah, I mean, practice this time of year, we don't get to see team drills. We just get to see individual work and stretching. So, from a standpoint of people looking for, so did this in practice, that's training camp talk, where we don't get to see that in the regular season prep mode, where everything's locked down at a CI level subterfuge, because God forbid you get to see a team drill.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Johnny Mac. Good stuff. We're going to talk about some of the preview here for the Eagles and the Chiefs, and coming into this matchup. It's a 4:25 game this Sunday, maybe the matchup of the week, John, for week 2 in the NFL. A lot of excitement, but, watching that week 1 game last week, John, with the Chiefs, not the Eagles, that Friday night game in Sao Paulo, Brazil, your thoughts on them from the offseason were ringing true, or at least early returns looked pretty accurate, that team has taken a step back. Now they lose a couple more players. Xavier Worthy is out, will not play this weekend. At least I'm pretty sure that's the update. I don't think he's playing this weekend. What are your thoughts on that Chiefs team, man? Coming into week 2, they obviously played versus their division rival Chargers in week 1, lost that game. Justin Herbert was excellent in that football game.
Oh, be careful. Be careful.
This is a Chiefs team, John, that is not, that doesn't look like, at least right now, they're going to be as good as they have been in years past. Now, they've been able to pull it out, so I'm not going to count them out just yet. But just kind of your early thoughts on this Chiefs team as we get ready for week 2.
Yeah, I think it's going to be about persevering for this team until they get some of the playmakers back. Rasheed Rice, Xavier Worthy, as you mentioned, and maybe they can start to, you know, perform better. I don't think they're a bad team. I want to make that clear, but I don't think they're a significant Super Bowl contender as they're currently um, built. And Patrick Mahomes is still Patrick Mahomes. And for the people that boil everything down to quarterback, you say, well, how can they not be a contender without Patrick Mahomes? Because my view, again, people are allowed to have differing views, believe it or not, is that quarterbacks don't win games by themselves. And I don't think his supporting cast is equipped to elevate to a Super Bowl level. Now, maybe the whole goal of football is to get better and play better as the season goes on. Um, and maybe that changes, as I said, when some of those playmakers get back. Maybe that changed. Josh Simmons is a rookie left tackle, looked kind of overmatched in week one. Maybe he gets better in the second half of the season. Obviously, he's got talent. So I think that's the goal for Kansas City. But there's a lot of obviously they want to play better than they played in the Super Bowl. Obviously, they don't want to start the season 0-2. They don't want to lose at home. So there's a lot of urgency for them, I would think. Um, because the last thing you want to do is get behind the eight ball so much you can't make it up in the second half of the season if you start playing better. So I would say it's a very important game for them in the first game at Arrowhead this year. So that factors into it. Although it's supposed to be very hot out there, strangely enough,
Yeah.
this week. So that might impact the game as well. Um, but, if you think about Tampa and the issue, Tampa's used to playing in that. Kansas City isn't. So I don't think it'll be an advantage necessarily. It's just which team handles it better.
Yeah, looking at that weather, John, it says 90 degrees in
Crazy.
Kansas City this weekend for that game. That is going to
Yeah.
be interestingly, might be like a weather game out there. I don't think it'll
Yeah.
be the same type of heat as Florida heat, obviously, but we'll see. I don't know.
Probably
A
gonna
lot of
see some
humidity.
cramping up and all
Yeah,
that kinda stuff, and
pretty
yeah.
high humidity out there as well. I mean, right now the humidity is 90%. So I don't know to look forward to Sunday. I don't know what it would be then, but definitely going to be a hot game at Arrowhead, which is interesting. You don't get to say that many times, John.
No, you don't even think about that as a potential option typically, and that's what I mean. It's a and we've talked about it with Tampa in the past. I think the mindset when you say that term "weather game" is that it's snow or rain or wind, and heat is just as big as the weather, and I pointed out that before with Tampa Bay, it's a huge
Right.
advantage. Miami, when they have a competent team, which is not the case right now. Teams that are used to playing in that kind of weather, they have a big advantage when there's a hot day. But um, yeah, you've seen the Eagles wilt in the Tampa Heat, so it's a real thing. It's definitely a real thing.
You have no doubt. It'll be interesting stuff there, John. Let's run through some of the things that I have on my mind coming into this game. I want to look at some of the things to watch in this game. The first one's pretty obvious, John. Chiefs could be without their two top receivers. I think they're going to be without. Rasheed Rice is obviously not playing, and Xavier Worthy. I haven't seen an update on him, but I'm pretty sure he's not playing in this game. That's my expectation. I don't.
No, I don't. I think you can safely rule him out. I'm not sure if Kansas City's done it yet, but yeah, I don't expect him to play this week. So
Yeah, so
you're going to
top
see
two
it.
receivers out, John, and Travis Kelce, as good of a player as he is, a Hall of Fame tight end, arguably one of the best tight ends of all time in this league, or at least in the conversation with the best of all time. He's on the decline. So the Kansas City Chiefs are a little bit void of weapons right now on that offense to try and really put the score up on the Eagles defense. I don't know what you think of that coming into this game, but how big of an impact will that be, the loss of those weapons, and how Patrick Mahomes can kind of manage without them?
Oh, it's a huge. Uh, I mean, it's they. You saw it last week. I mean, when they did lose Worthy, and remember, Worthy's not like C.D. Lamb or George Pickens even. to begin with. But what he is he's fast, and he suffered a dislocated shoulder. So evidently, Andy, he's not going on injured reserve. They're not having surgery right now, so they're trying to rehab it. But dislocated shoulder, he's not coming back in a week. So, um, it's a threat you have to account for. And if you start talking about, the Juju Smith Schusters of the world, not a lot of speed there from an NFL receiver standpoint. So, you do have Hollywood Brown, you do have Tyquan Thornton, who's very fast, but struggled in New England. Not a very proven receiver. So when you look at it by NFL levels and what you saw last week with Dallas, yeah, that's a poor receiving group without Rasheed Rice and Xavier Worthy. So, from the standpoint of the Eagles and the concern about, the secondary, put that context into terms, it's going to be easier this week. So they might look better. So don't get overhyped if they look better either, because most teams are going to have a better receiving group. And that's what you're putting on Patrick Mahomes now. Travis Kelce's still a good player, but he's not what he once was. Noah Gray's a good, I expect they'll play a lot of 12 because they have two good tight ends. But, it's a tough way to live in the NFL. And it's more about long drives and dink and dunk. And we all know what happens, 13, 14 play drives. The whole mentality of keeping everything in front of you in this league is about, well, if you go that long, you're going to have a false start. You're going to have a negative play. And all of a sudden, you're going to be behind the sticks and up against it and off the field. So that's the whole mentality from a defensive standpoint to play that style of defense. And when you don't have big big play guys who can make plays down the field, it's a slog is what it is. And
Right.
that's what Kansas City looks like,
Yeah, they
and
really
has
do.
looked like really in the wake of losing Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, no doubt. John, 16 is the number I'm going to give you. Any idea what that number represents for that Chiefs offense from week one? The number 16?
No idea, but I can text Jeff Kerr.
He might know. So Hollywood Brown, John, got 16 targets in week one. That's a lot of targets, John, for Hollywood Brown. I mean, A.J. Brown, who is a superior player to Hollywood Brown,
Slightly,
to the least,
slightly,
got one target. Hollywood Brown got 16. He finished the game with 10 catches for 99 yards. So I think a lot of that maybe is because of losing Xavier early in that game, where
he's all they had at
your game plan wasn't prepared. But I assume Hollywood Brown's going to have to be a big impact again this week, and maybe Juju Smith-Schuster will share in some of those targets. But they are certainly missing a lot of talent, John. Hollywood Brown and Mahomes didn't really look like they were on the same page, despite having the 16 targets. So that's an offense, John, that just is. They don't strike much fear, man. They really don't.
That's exactly it. And when you don't, and even Pacheco, very good running back, but he's not an explosive guy. He's not the guy who's going to break one for 60.
Yeah, no.
He's just a good hard runner. And when you don't have those explosive plays, and the Eagles' mentality is, and it's proven out by the number, all the advanced numbers, all the nonsense you'll hear about. You win the turnover battle, you win the explosive play battle, you're going to win the numbers near 90% of the time. Well, it's really hard for the Chiefs to win the explosive play battle on any given week right now, because they're just not equipped with big time playmakers. Now, you're going to see some off schedule stuff from Patrick Mahomes. He's still Patrick Mahomes. You saw it last week. I mean, you talk about Hollywood Brown, 10 for 99. All right, that's not impressive for an NFL receiver, an NFL speed receiver, 9.9 yards per carry, per reception. It's not great. Well, his longest reception was an explosive play. It was 49 yards. So what does that mean? Well, he had 9 receptions for 50 yards. What kind of slog is that?
Right.
So that's what you're talking about with the Kansas City offense and Juju. Good hands, good player, but it's just not explosive. Kelsey at this stage, he got loose on a broken coverage for the one touchdown, but that's a defensive mistake. Let's be honest. Um, yeah, it's hard for them with the difficult ability to generate explosive plays.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Another receiver they're going to have in this game is Tyquan Thornton, who is a speedster.
Now
Now, I
he
don't
can
know.
run. Yeah,
He can run. He's got that 4.28 speed, but he's not a super productive receiver at the
No,
NFL
no.
level. So we'll see if he can combine or do anything this week for the Kansas City Chiefs. But yeah, Chargers kind of made their way. John, you already broached this with my first thing I wanted to bring up with the lack of receivers in Kansas City, but they don't exactly have the best running game either, John. They got Kareem Hunt and they got Isaiah Pacheco, two good players, but not the type of players that you want to have when you're missing your big target receivers. So that Chiefs offense is really just they don't have much, man. Those running backs aren't great. The receivers aren't great. And they're even worse now without Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice. I think this is going to be an Eagles defensive game. A good chance for them to get back on track here.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then you could argue they got back on track a little bit after the lightning delay against the Cowboys, but I don't know. A lot of drop passes as well. So not as impressed with the Eagles defense as maybe some people were because I thought it was, circumstance more than anything. But this is a week where they should look better, and if they don't look better, then it's time to really start looking at some things. I would say because they should look better in this game. And defensively, I should mention that's the one guy I didn't mention with the injuries. Jalen Hunt popped up with a hip injury. He did practice, but he was limited, so I should mention that. But I think now that Za'Darius is here, I think his role will start to recede a little bit. It'll be, I'm not saying immediate, but pretty quickly. Um, so, and I think he'll be better suited for that role as the third edge rusher rather than just throwing him into the deep end of the pool.
Yeah, no doubt about it. John, closing up, just the thoughts on that Chiefs offense. That offensive line. Now the last year they didn't have the best offensive line in terms of the Super Bowl. It was not awful. There was a couple good players out there, but it has changed now coming into this year. In Week 1, they had Creed Humphrey at center, who's obviously a very good player, and Trey Smith is their right guard. Those are their two best players on the offensive line. Two really good players. Right tackle, they got Jawan Taylor, who's as you call him, a walking flag waiting to happen. They got the rookie Josh Simmons, who's coming off a torn patellar tendon. He had an okay start in Week 1, nothing crazy. I think he allowed 4 pressures I saw on PFF. And then left guard is Kingsley Suamataia. I don't know if I said his name right. So definitely some opportunity for the Eagles pass rush and Za'Darius Smith to get out there and, maybe make his impact on the Eagles in his first game, Joe.
Yeah. And Jalen Carter being back, obviously, I'd line him up over Kingsley.
Yeah.
Basically from the
Sorry,
get-go.
Kingsley. It's going to be a long day for you with Jalen Carter on the other side of you.
It's interesting because last year they had a great interior line and poor tackles. And part of the problem with the Super Bowl is Joe Thuney, who's now in Chicago, but longtime great player, multiple Pro Bowls, multiple All Pros, really good guard. But they had to play left tackle. The reason, one of the guys that they wanted to be a left tackle was Kingsley, and obviously he couldn't do that. So they had to move poor Joe Thuney out there, and Josh Sweat just ate him for lunch. But he's not a left tackle. Was very good interior, and so is Creed Humphrey. Might be the best center in football. Trey Smith is one of the better guards in football. So they're not quite as strong losing Thuney and the idea was that Simmons could step in. He did not play well. I watched that game. He did not play well. Um, but he's a rookie, and maybe starts to get it. Taylor, I just don't get. Of all people, Andy Reid, that he continues to put up with
I
that.
know.
I just don't get. So yeah, they're a work in progress. You hope Simmons can get better, should get better, but they don't look very good right now, and even less so without Thuney. So again, they've taken a step back more than anything else. Speaking of PFF, they had Kansas City. I'm looking. So they grade all the teams in 1, 2, 3, 4, 13 different categories. Kansas City was number 30 in week 1. 30 of 32 teams. The only two teams worse were the New York Giants and the Miami Dolphins. They're not what they were. But Patrick Mahomes will mask some of that, no doubt. But they got a lot of issues that they have to fix. And it's part of the cyclical nature of football that I talk about all the time, talent-wise. When you're that good for that long, you're picking 31, you're picking 32, you're not getting difference-making players if they don't develop. All of a sudden, and I've said it from the opposite, you look at a team like Detroit, who's terrible year after year after year after year, and all of a sudden you wake up one day and they got all these players because they've been picking at the top of the draft and doing some other smart things, and you go, wow, all right, and here they are. And that's what happened kind of last year. Well, the opposite is kind of happening with the Chiefs. And that's just part of it. It's harder to develop players when you're picking at 31, 32 every year.
No doubt. Johnny Mac, moving over to the Eagles offensive side coming into this football game, one of the main storylines coming out of Super Bowl 59 last year was the way Steve Spagnuolo tried to stop the Eagles offense. All right, I'm going to take away Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts, made them pay for it, Johnny Mac. How do you think that changes this time around for Steve Spagnuolo? And what do you think the Eagles offense does to try and, beat that defense this time as compared to the way they did it in the Super Bowl? You think it'll be the same? You think Spags is going to double down and do the same thing? Is he going to take a page out of the Eberflus book and maybe do that, but keep a spy? What do you think? How do you think that plan changed? If you're Steve Spags, you got to be at the drawing board, man, wondering, all right, I can't do that again. We gave up a 40 burger, but what do I do differently this time without letting Saquon take me to the woodshed?
Yeah, I one of the most amusing things of the offseason is that because Kansas City was successful stopping Saquon Barkley in the Super Bowl, that everybody would do that. Looked at my head, I go, yeah, I don't think they were too successful in the Super Bowl overall. So I don't know why anybody would be looking to replicate that. And that's part of the problem when dealing with the Eagles is that if you take away one thing and you're hyper focused on it, they can just toggle to the other thing. But because they have talent all over the place, that's part of the problem. It's difficult to deal with. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't expect them to do the same thing. And then the part of it, and Nick has brought this up, and Jalen talked about it yesterday, and I talked about it, and I know nobody listens. These are not the same two teams. There's 30+% turnover,
Right.
bunch of different players. I just talked about one of them, Josh Sweat, and another one from Kansas City, Joe Thuney. Joe Thuney's in Chicago. Josh Sweat's in Arizona. Up, down the roster. That's the NFL. So completely different teams, different situations. So no, I don't think the Super Bowl will have that much relevance on this game as far as game plans go. And I think from Philadelphia, look, they'll try to take advantage of the limitations on Kansas City skill position people, and from Spagnuolo's standpoint, um, I expect him to be more layered as far as not being hyper focused on one particular player. Because he got, as you said, he got gouged by John, and I've heard him verbalize that. He knows he got gouged, so yeah, I know. I certainly don't
Yeah,
expect him to.
don't you remember that interview he did like a couple weeks later, and he was like,
Yeah,
"I still can't watch the tape of that game."
yeah.
That game,
He
Jalen.
knows that was an embarrassing performance from their perspective. So he's not going to replicate it. Um, yeah, he's going to try to do something else. I think if you learn from, because Eberflus did everything pretty well, except he didn't have those guys ready to be disciplined on the pass rush. Maybe that's just week one, whatever. But you got to be really disciplined when you're playing a quarterback like Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen or Lamar. You got to be so disciplined on the pass rush. And you can even look at guys who aren't successful, like Caleb Williams. You saw it on Monday night. He's gouging them left and right with his legs. You got to be really, really disciplined with the pass rush and make sure you pin them, you keep them in the pocket. Don't let them get outside the pocket. And that's easier said than done, obviously. But I think, yeah, I don't expect a similar plan from Kansas City.
No, me neither. And we'll see what they end up doing. John, who do you think will be who do you think will kind of the Eagles offense will run through this week? Will it be another Jalen Hurts game? Do you think AJ Brown gets more involved? I know it's tough to predict that, but I am just wondering what kind of their approach is going to be coming in, especially, coming off. I do think the Eagles, whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, they do like to correct the narrative sometimes, maybe sometimes too much. And I'm sure
I'd agree. I'd agree.
And
But
sometimes, they've already been asked. You heard AJ Brown getting asked. By the way, he did an interview with who was that with? Jordan Schultz. That was pretty good. And AJ kind of addressed the rumors. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't a decoy.
by the way, AJ told me that yesterday because he was watching our show with Josh Shapiro. So
was he?
Shout out from AJ Brown. Yeah.
All right,
But he said, but he thanked me for saying, yeah, he's not a decoy. They're not putting him out there week one as a decoy. The Eagles aren't that stupid. So, yeah, they do have a history they do have a history. If you look at the DeMonte game that Nick always brings up, he got the first target the next game, and had like 6 receptions for well over 100 yards. I think he had 2 touchdowns. When AJ doesn't get the ball, he gets the ball early. When think about that Carolina game last year, which was when all the angst was with the passing comment and all that kind of stuff. And they won it. Then the next game was the Pittsburgh game, where Jalen after the game said, "Is that what you wanted to see?" or what? Paraphrasing. Right. So they do have a history of correcting that narrative. So I do expect both AJ and DeMonte to be hyper focused. They'll be hyper focused on getting them involved. I do believe that. And they're right from the sense of, like, who cares if you win the game? But the reality is, yeah, they don't like to hear what's wrong with the passing game. Why do you have players like AJ Brown and DeMonte Smith and they're getting, in AJ's case, 1 target in 60 minutes of football, as you just pointed out? How many did Hollywood Brown have?
Yeah, 16.
But, the Eagles are playing more successful, efficient football.
Yeah. See, the thing I struggle with this, John, is like, all right, I'm with you guys. I just want to win the game. I think that's most important, and I'm happy that the Eagles take that perspective. But how do you gauge? Like, we have AJ fucking Brown. Like, how do we, like, if I told you JJ McCarthy's not going to throw to Justin Jefferson, you'd say, yeah, that's probably pretty dumb. If I told you Joe Burrow wasn't going to throw to Jamar Chase, you'd say that's probably pretty dumb.
By the way, JJ,
how do you game? All right, I want to win the football game, but I also have AJ freaking Brown.
by the way, JJ McCarthy was the NFC Player of the Week.
Oh, that is baloney.
What I mean, if nothing else proves what a garbage award that is, that can't be highlighted more. Look, the guy deserves credit. He came back. He had a terrible start. But overall, if you look at his film, if you look at how he played the entire game, it wasn't good. They just happened to play a bad team and persevere, and he's getting NFC Offensive Player of the Week. It's comical. But anyway, yeah, with AJ's case, yeah, it's obviously a delicate balance. I asked for that reason. I asked both Kevin Patullo and Nick Sirianni this week about manufactured touches because sometimes you got to just get your best players to football. I don't think the Eagles have done that well over the years. Now, part of it is they don't really have a jet sweep guy, a reverse guy. That's not AJ's game. That's not Devontae's game. If it would be more Jahan Dotson or maybe, I don't even know that enough of if John Mechie could do it. But so, it's limited from that standpoint. The bubble screens, which I hate, by the way, I'm all for no more bubble screens. That's my platform in politics. I'm going to ban the bubble screen. I think it's the ugliest play in football. But it's an easy way to get somebody the football as well. And Nick explained that's more of a numbers game, which I knew, but he explains it. It's essentially an extension of the running game. If you have the numbers, you throw it outside to try to take advantage of a one less defender. But all of their answers made sense. You don't want to force the football. You don't want to tell the quarterback what to do. That's bad. I agree with that 1,000,000%. I think that's part of the problem with college football so much, and then now it's bleeding into the NFL where these coaches don't allow the quarterback to have enough autonomy at the line of scrimmage. I think that is very bad for football teams. And if you don't have a quarterback or you're not striving to get a quarterback who can handle things at the line of scrimmage, you're screwed. If I'm an owner, if somebody wants to give me $10 billion, then feel free. But if I'm an owner, I don't even listen to a coach. I don't interview a coach who doesn't want a quarterback who can handle things at the line of scrimmage. I don't want that guy. That's ego driven. So there's a fine line, but to your point, you got to get your best players the football. You got to. You can't have a player at that level not getting the football. Bottom line, I don't care how you do it. Fix it. And we're talking Tua. I think a lot of people forget because AJ didn't get the target to 58 minutes. Devontae didn't get the ball either. He had 3 catches for 15 yards or whatever, 16 yards. He didn't get it either. You got to get those guys involved. It's fair to say that.
I agree. We'll see what they end up doing in this game. Johnny Mac, good stuff. Great opening segment. Eagles versus Chiefs. Week 2 matchup, 425 this weekend for the Birds at Arrowhead. It's going to be 90 degrees. At least it says that right now. It's going to be 90 degrees.
90.
So
it's going to be cooler in Philadelphia than Arrowhead Stadium this week.
Yeah, that's interesting. Good stuff, John. We'll get to our first commercial break. When we come back, we do have Les Bowen in hour number 2, so we'll talk to Les. I'm looking forward to hearing from Les, seeing what he thought of week 1 and kind of what his thoughts are as we enter week 2. A lot obviously happened in week 1 in the NFL. It's always a fast-paced league, and we love that about it. So we'll do that coming up. We will get to some super chats here. Let's get to the super chats now. Charles, what's up, Charles? What's the minimum points needed for a Birds win? I have no idea how to quantify that number.
What the minimum points? I would say 2. You can get a safety and win a game. But I know what he's trying to ask. It's I don't think it's going to be a high number. I don't think Kansas City's equipped to win a shootout at its current incarnation, with the lack of playmakers that we talked about. So, I do think if it's a blowout, it's going to be a definite Eagles win. I think Kansas City has to play a very clean game. and win, on a field goal, on a Harrison Butker field goal late. I think that's the formula to try to keep it close and steal it at the end, maybe with magician like Patrick Mahomes play off schedule. I would say is their path to victory.
I agree. That's pretty crazy to say about a team that's won 3 Super Bowls in the last 5 years. So, but you're right.
Well, again, it's you asked me yesterday or the day before about playing somebody early or late. Oh, Washington. It's like it's not early or late. It's who's available at that time. And right now, like I'd rather play Kansas City this week than week 9, week 10 when Rice is back and Worthy's back. Right now is the time you want to play the Kansas City Chiefs, even though there's still some difficulty going to Arrowhead opening day for them, those fans. There's some difficulty from that perspective, but they don't have their guys. So this is when you want them. Exactly when you want them.
Good stuff there. Prince, what's up, Prince? He says, Sills owes me an apology, LOL. Xander, he's not the only one who knows how to watch tape. I'm being petty, LOL. But I do know what I'm talking about. Yes, you do, Prince. Prince, you're not taking silly personally, are you, Prince? Come on, Prince. You know better than that,
everybody
Prince.
Everybody wants apologies, too. Nobody's got to apologize for Prince, you don't have to apologize for your football take. I don't have to apologize for my football take. But, we're going to give I can't speak for Dan, but we're going to give our honest opinions for the most part. I am. You never have to apologize for that.
I agree. Johnny Mac, great stuff, brother. Appreciate everybody for being here this morning. Hit that like button. We're trying to do the 200 likes while live. So hopefully we get more than that with the amount of people that watch after the show is ended. But while live, we got to get to 200 likes. We got almost 1,000 people watching total and around 500 on YouTube. So hit that like button, everybody. Appreciate all of you guys being here. When we come back, we'll continue to break down the Eagles and the Chiefs matchup, and then we'll talk to Les Bowen in hour number 2. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back on Birds 365.